Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are starting into Chapter 6, Unit 5, beginning Unit 5, all about human population and its impact on the lovely little planet we live on. And so let's get right into it. This first section's a little bit longer. So, just so you know, there's a couple websites on this first page for you. Both of these first two websites, if you'd like to go or you're interested in looking, they both give you up-to-date information of what the population of the world is, of the U.S. It has tickers of birth and death rates, so you can kind of see the rate of change. The second one has a little more information on it. It has stuff like how often extinction is happening and things like that. So they're kind of just current clock tickers that let you know kind of the general status of the world. This last one down here is an NPR video that just does a good job of kind of summarizing and going over the changes in world population and how the population has grown over time in different parts of the planet, different continents. So all three of them are good to check out. I recommend that you do that. So here is the current population general trends that have occurred over the last 1,000 years or so. So starting in 1000 AD and working its way this way all the way up to over just past 2000. This book was written a while ago, so most of the statistics in this book are about 2006, 2008, right in that range. But it gives you still a pretty good perspective on how things have worked. You see that this is exponential growth that we have happening in the human population on the planet, and you can see the vast majority of that, and it has been this way for quite some time, is made up of Asia. The next major group is Africa, followed by Europe, Latin America, North America, and then Oceania, out there, Polynesian islands, things like that. And so that's the general breakdown of where the people live on the planet. This is another diagram of the exact same idea. It's showing where those people live within those continents, and so you can see, and again, this has been this way for the vast majority of human history. Most people live over here in Asia, China and India specifically, and then of course there's pockets of population in other locations as well. This is generally out of different colors countries based on land and area, and what they've done is they've altered that in this next picture to show you what it is in reference to territory as a proportion of human population. And you see when you shift from here to here, some big swells happen. Specifically, there's quite a swelling of India right in this area, and China right here in this area. Those get much larger. Japan gets much larger. Other things shrink. Regions of South America, things like that. So it gives you a perspective on density population of people. This is showing you growth rates. So this is a different look at population, not just how many people are living in certain places, but specifically, are those places kind of stagnant in their population growth, or are they growing? And so if they're light colored on here, like Russia, Greenland, things like that, Canada, all of these lighter colored countries in Europe, these are all ones with extremely slow population growths. You get into orange next here, like US, China, Australia. These are ones that have moderate growth. Pink's the next level up. They're a little bit greater in their growth, and these hot pink countries all the way through, you can see a lot of them are centralized in Africa. These are ones with huge population growths. We're talking over 2% growth a year, which is quite high. Here's a breakdown of how that growth has happened over the last several hundred years, and how that growth has pertained specifically to how we've gained the billions we have. So we're currently over 7 billion, about 7.2, 7.3 billion people, and that we passed that threshold in 2011, as you can see right here. But the first billion people showed up on the planet in 1804, so it's been a while since then. And then after that, population from there to the next time we had another billion added, when we got to 2 billion, was 123 years it took to get from 1 billion to 2 billion people. And then from 2 billion to get to 3 billion in 1960, it was only 33 years. So you can see, and then from there 14 more years to get to the next one, 13, 12, and 12 more years after that to get up to the 7 billion we're at currently. So you can see that that number is become less and less to get from 1 billion on to the next one. Now these bottom two numbers are predictions about how long they think it's going to take us to get to 8 billion and then eventually to 9 billion. And those estimates, of course, are estimates, so they could vary greatly, but you see it's 17 and 22, which is a little bit longer than these marks here, because we're making a concerted effort in many places to change population dynamic. In other places like developed countries, and there are many of these, the populations are shrinking. And so the combination of those is helping to create some more longevity in between the adding of billions, but we're still growing and they're still being added. So world population is projected to increase from 7 billion to 9.3 billion by the time we get halfway through this millennium. And so 9.3 is a projection, again, anywhere from 8 to up to 10 is possible, but this is a general number that you see bump into quite often, is their prediction of 9.3. And most all of this is going to occur in China and India, a huge chunk of it, not almost all, but a huge chunk of it's going to occur in China and India. Very large populations. And so the core case study in your book is, how many is enough? I mean, how many is too many? How many people can we have on this planet? So some people argue that we already have too many people. The 7 billion we have is too many. Some people feel like the world can support several more billions of people, and so we're not yet to our full capacity. And so those are all up for debate. The truth of the matter is nobody knows for sure, but technological advances help us to create more food and more opportunities for people so we can have more people live longer on the planet. So the question is a constant debate of exactly what will be the case for population growth. But we do know that if we want to reduce the population in any way, shape, or form, we're going to have to consider lots of factors. We can't just say you can have so many babies or you can't. What moral implications are there in asking people to have less children or change the way they go about creating their families? What religious implications are there? And then what kind of personal freedoms do people have? Do you have the personal right to choose how many children you should have? Do you have those reproductive rights? And these are questions that are being asked around the globe, and people are handling those questions differently depending on what country you're in. And then we need to keep in mind that this debate touches a lot of things. So it's an interaction between population growth, but it also affects economic growth, and it affects politics, and it affects how the environment is impacted. And I would argue, and I think you could argue quite easily, that it's the most important issue involving environmental science that we currently have. And so it's an important one to be able to answer eventually. So in section 1 here, we're going to talk about how many people the Earth can support potentially. And so it brings us to this idea of carrying capacity, and we'll talk about it as we go through. But why have we grown so fast? Why has our population boomed so much? Well, there are 3 major reasons that you can make note of on here, and it's in your study, or it's one of the first questions in your study guide, actually. So we've moved into areas we haven't been in before, new habitats and climate zones. Good example, Texas. Houston, Texas is 7 million people. That wasn't the case before air conditioning came along. And so new technologies have allowed us to live in a place where we probably wouldn't live in that abundance if we didn't have air conditioning. Modern agricultural techniques are enabling us to feed a lot more people. And then we've learned to control infectious disease, or we've handled our health issues through better sanitation and antibiotics and vaccines that have got children to live longer and not die, and all kinds of things like that that have helped the population out significantly, or helped it grow significantly. And so that leads us to a term, and that's terms right here, carrying capacity, cultural carrying capacity. And right down here, it's the maximum population our planet can support in a sustainable manner that would allow most people to live in a reasonable comfort. So not just how many can exist on the planet, but how many can live in a way that's comfortable for them to live sustainably long term is what cultural carrying capacity is. You'll see that that idea of environmental carrying capacity actually shrinks over time because we use up resources that are non-renewable. And so the question is, how's that going to dip? When's it going to dip? Where's it going to dip? And then have we overshot that? Have we went past our carrying capacity yet? And are we going to trail back down? What's that going to look like? And so, again, 9.3 was the estimate earlier, but 7.2 to 10.6 is the guesstimation by 2050. And the important thing is most of that growth of those several billion people, 97% of it is going to come from developing countries, people that live in extreme poverty. And that creates its own set of environmental issues and human rights issues and all kinds of things along those lines. So, those projections, again, there's three different choices here when we talk about the UN's population projections. There's a high projection, which is 10.8, medium projection, which is 9.3, and the low projection, which is 7.8. And really those are all coming down to guesstimations based on that 97% of people in developed countries. So 2006, the population developing countries was 0.10% per year. Okay, but the fast ones were 15 times that rate. So developed countries like the US and things like that were growing, but not very quickly. Underdeveloped countries are growing significantly faster. And so it's a matter of how we handle educating and working with those countries to which one of these projected numbers we're going to end up at. And some of the basic ideas of this started with this guy right here, Thomas Robert. This guy back in 1798, so a long time ago, talked about human population. And he made basically a prediction that said the human population is going to grow exponentially, which is what we have been doing. But he said the food production was going to grow linearly. And so that was going to create a huge problem. We were going to get to the point where we were going to have issues here, where the food couldn't keep up with the population. And so the earth was gonna basically hit its carrying capacity, and then human populations would crash back down due to famines and disease because of an inability to support the population that would exist there. And so even though the humans have altered 83% of our planet, and we have stripped the earth away and worn away on its carrying capacity quite a bit, his predictions still haven't come true yet. We still haven't got there, and we haven't resulted in those issues yet. And the main reason for that is technology. It's allowed us our food production to increase exponentially as well. It hasn't happened in a linear way. He assumed it would. And so we're still in the wait and see game. If in the end his ideas are going to still come true, with the exception of this linear idea, it's just a matter of time. And so, but he was one of the first guys to propose this idea and this understanding of resource management and human impact of overpopulation, those kind of ideas. And so that's the end of section 1. Stay tuned. We'll move on to the next one.